Hello again, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our Alzheimer's video series. As always, if you've been tuning in, you know that we've covered a little bit about general Alzheimer's information, the different types of Alzheimer's, and we've started to cover interventions on what you can do to help minimize your risk of developing Alzheimer's, or if you're someone who's already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or started to notice those things, to really help slow it down or possibly even reverse some of it. So we've already talked a little bit about diet and supplements, but today I'm excited now to talk a little bit about stress.
Yeah, I mean,
and
who isn't
sleep.
excited to talk about stress, right?
Right. I tend to love to talk about sleep, as that's what I really prefer. But both are so important,
Yep.
right? I mean, we are in such a high stress world these days, and sleep seems to be one of the first things to go. People have so much they want to get done, and
Yeah, they're so tied together that
they are.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and which do you try to address first, sleep or stress, or which
Right.
came first?
The chicken and the
Yeah,
egg.
exactly. I think let's jump into stress, because I think that one of the things we want to clarify is the different types of stress. There's good stress, like the stress that you put on your body when you're working out, or you're trying to get something done, and it just makes you more efficient.
Right.
That can be a good stress, but we're really addressing the stress that when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like there's nothing you can do, that stress that just weighs heavy on us.
That's the type of stress that people really think of when they hear the word stress.
Absolutely.
Is usually all of like the
Yeah.
overwhelming,
I'm
it
stressed
feels like you
out.
can't deal with it sort of stress.
Yeah. So I can't remember how long ago it was. It was a few years ago, anyways. The American Medical Association published a study that just showed how much stress impacts all the major illnesses in the United States. And I think it said that about 80 to 85% of all chronic illnesses in the United States have stress as a major factor in what's causing it.
That is
There was a study
huge.
done. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's something about zebras don't get ulcers, and there's a guy that just all he does is study stress in our environment, but mostly on animals and seeing how stress impacts them. And he did a study, or at least in the book, it talks about a study done up in Canada, where they looked at people under chronic stress. I think they defined that as people dealing with stressor that's lasted more than 3 months.
Okay.
Those people had the same health factors, like health risks, as someone that was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow. An entire pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, so
like that's
it
big
does show
impact.
you how bad stress is on our health. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously then you said that it affects, what was it, 80 to 85%, right around there, of
all chronic illness.
All chronic illness. So I'm assuming Alzheimer's is included in there.
It is, and it's actually a huge one, because one of the hormones we release when we're stressed is cortisol. Cortisol has been shown to be really damaging to a part of the brain called the basal ganglion, which is, the hippocampus. The basal ganglion is more involved in Parkinson's, but hippocampus is where we create our memories.
Okay.
And,
learning and memories, correct?
Exactly. So if we have something that's damaging that, like cortisol, like some people would call it, like it's making like holes in it, like you're making a Swiss cheese, that's how bad cortisol is on our brain. And so we can see that the impact of stress on our brain.
Yeah. So in terms of interventions, I mean, what can we really say about that? Because it's easy to tell someone like, oh, just relax.
Yeah,
Like
I
don't
think
worry so much.
I think of the Bible verses that talk about don't be anxious, don't worry about anything. Tomorrow's got its own worries. And easier said than done, right? But I do think that those verses also have very smart things that we can do, that applications that I think can really help with our stress. So obviously how we handle our stress is more important than having stress. In fact, I just read a book recently on cancer. It's called Anti-Cancer. And it took they talked about a study where they took 3 groups of mice, they injected them with cancer cells.
I think I've heard of this one, but it's super interesting.
It is, because it just shows you, so the one group they injected cancer cells in, they knew that about 50% of those mice would get cancer from those injected cells. So then they wanted to see with the other 2 groups, after injecting cancer cells into them, what would stress what kind of impact would stress have on them. And so the one group, what they would do is they would stress them by giving them a shock, and then after they got that initial shock, they would get random shocks uncontrollably, meaning there was nothing they could do to stop those shocks. So they just had
very helpless.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good word to describe it. And then there was a group that they would shock them, and then what they would do is they would continuously shock them randomly after that. But they would teach them if they ran over and hit this bar, they could shut off the shocks. Okay. And so one group got stressed, so they both got stressed, but one group got the stress and couldn't do anything about it. One group got the stress and they could do something about it. And the group that couldn't do anything about it at the end of the study, I think it was almost as high as 80-some% of those mice got cancer. So you can see that stress increases your risk of cancer.
Right, a big increase.
For sure. But the group that had control, they found that less than 50%, I think it was around the 40-some%, got cancer.
Wow.
So they actually showed not only did they not have like an increased risk of cancer due to the stress, they actually went down. They actually decreased their risk because, so it showed you that having stress in your life isn't necessarily a bad thing. Where it's a bad thing is when you feel helpless, when you have no way of dealing with that stress.
So a big intervention then would be basically learning ways of how to cope with stress.
For sure.
Correct.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of people don't know how to handle it. Again, when we look at what the Bible teaches us, it teaches us that we are going to have hard times in our life. I think that sometimes we kind of go through life thinking that, well, nothing bad should really happen to me. I'm a good person. I do good things. I'm taking good care of my body, and how I got sick, what happened? I was doing all the right things, and so I think that people don't realize that, hey, things can happen to us. There's a lot of things, and so if you live with actually an expectation that probably things that are gonna not so good happen in my life, that I am gonna have bad things happen in my life, I think that that's one of the big things, is just having that understanding of that. And then how do you deal with it is super important as well.
Right. And I mean, people can do maybe some self-exploration of like what sorts of things do help me cope with stress, but personally, I think a great asset for those type of people in terms of stress would be a health or life coach that kind of helps them learn good ways of coping with stress.
For sure. And as a health coach yourself, you see that, and you see the turnaround that when you help a person to implement those coping skills, you can see that their health turns around.
You see big improvements. It's really interesting to see, actually. So.
It is. So I think that that's one of the important things. It's not like, because a lot of times we see seminars and such that they're trying to teach you how do you eliminate your stress. And
right, and we don't necessarily want that. Like
no,
you shared that that's not necessarily the best way to approach it. It's really more so learning how to cope with it, how to handle it, how to manage it.
So there's definitely things that we can do to reduce stress. There's things that there's habits and stuff that people do, like procrastination, all those things that can lead to more stress, and they can be dealt with, but there's still, you need to have stress in your life, and it's going to happen anyway. So learning to cope with it, I think, is one of the key things. Absolutely. Okay,
interesting. And moving along to the next intervention that we wanted to talk about today, being sleep, because I know I work with a lot of people on how to improve their sleep and get not just more quantity sleep, but higher quality sleep too. Let's talk a little bit about how sleep impacts Alzheimer's.
Yeah, recently I heard a neuroscientist, all he does is do research on the brain, and he looked at what are the top 5 things based off of all the studies that they've done, what are the top 5 things that make people happy, and the number 1 thing was having good quality sleep.
Really? For things that make people happy. Having high quality sleep was a big one.
The number 1.
Wow.
So not only is it important, it was up there before some of the other things that we would think of, like exercise and social network and having a family and having faith. sleep was the number one.
Well, and I mean, sleep is just so important to everything related to the brain, right? I mean, if you think about just how you do, like, say you get 3 hours of sleep one night for some reason, like, and how you think the rest of the day, you feel like you can't focus on things, you can't do anything, so.
Yeah, and this topic really warrants that we're going to go into a video in and of itself that talks about sleep hygiene, because I think that that's super important. Sleep hygiene just meaning what are the habits that we do that will allow us to sleep well. But sleep, the importance of sleep. When we're sleeping, we go through a thing called autophagy. Have you heard that term before?
Yes, I have. So I mean, I'll let you explain it a little bit more, but basically that kind of repair and getting rid of.
So we clear out the things that we really don't need in our brain. We enhance the things that allow our brain to make stronger connections,
out with the bad, in with the new.
Yes,
sort of.
Exactly. And if you're not getting that sleep, it isn't happening.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of research that shows what happens to sleep-deprived people, from illnesses to mental, cognitive health issues. So we do need to have that sleep. And not only is it about the amount, because people ask us all the time, well, how much sleep then?
Right.
So there's a wide range. Some people would say 6 to 8 hours. That's probably a good amount, but we don't know unless you know how well the person's sleeping. Meaning, quality is way more important than quantity. So if I slept for 12 hours, but I tossed and turned for most of the night, and I didn't kept waking up in the middle of the night, that kind of thing, that's not good quality. Versus if I just slept 6 hours straight, fell asleep, woke up the next day, it's 6 hours later, I probably am going to feel more refreshed than that person. They got twice as much sleep. So it's really important, the quality of sleep. And there's so many things that can impact our sleep. But, I mean, we see this one so many times that people will, every night I wake up, it's about 2, 3 in the morning, and it takes me about an hour to an hour and a half to get back to sleep. And so that could be a few different reasons why someone. It could be that they have poor blood sugar control and they're releasing cortisol in the middle of their sleep, and it's causing them to wake up, because cortisol causes people to wake up. It's the wake-up hormone. It could be that they have a hormone imbalance. It could be that they have something structurally wrong, like a prostate issue, like a man that's having to go to the bathroom all the time.
Right.
So there's a lot of different reasons why people would wake up, and in that other video we'll address some of those reasons, that some of the things that people could do to avoid those problems of being woke up in the middle of the night.
Awesome. Well, so we've covered a bit about stress, a bit about sleep. Obviously, we'll have more in that sleep hygiene video that we will put a link to either within the video or in the description.
Yeah. In that video too, we'll talk about, because there's a lot of supplements that can go around. You think of melatonin being a big one.
I've heard of that one.
So we're going to talk, during that video, we'll talk about that too. And then also another video that we're going to have created is going to be the video that's going to be on stress, because stress is an important thing to do. So,
okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's telling us that we need to be done.
Yep, I was just going to say, we might need to pause and move the mouse around a little bit to get that back, but should we still wrap it up?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, is there anything else then that you want to share that we haven't yet, just to wrap things up before we go?
Yeah, I think the last thing again is just to reiterate that these last few videos are really just things that people can be doing on their own. Things that, again, if you're trying to prevent it, if you're trying to slow it down, or you're trying to reverse it, I would say that the people that are trying to prevent it, they can implement a lot of these things just on their own without having to work with us, and they would see a lot of help. But then we look at the people that are dealing with trying to reverse it, they really are going to need to come alongside a practitioner like myself, like yourself, and get that help that they need, because they're going to need guidance and direction. But again, cannot stress this enough that there is hope, that people can get better, that they can experience. So, greater health, they can get the problem taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing the message of hope with everyone out there. I mean, just knowing that there's stuff that we can do is is huge, and it's very empowering.
Absolutely.
So again, don't forget to check out the sleep hygiene video. If you haven't yet watched the video that we did on the interventions with diet and supplements, go ahead and check those out. The video for the ketogenic life, or the ketogenic diet, is super helpful too. So just, again, if you feel like you know anyone else who would benefit from this video too, like, please also share the message with Hope with them.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Elizabeth.